everybody, welcome to Rock and Roll Shin-Soo Chew. This is episode number 98, a field guide to 1989. There we go. Matt Noakes. I am Gabe Estel, and I'm here with Levi Love Is All Around You Leech, and Jonathan Gigolo, sucker, gets. How you doing, boys?
Great, now.
I think you see where I'm going with that. Yeah. So, again, as I mentioned, this is a field guide to 1989. So glad everybody could be with us. I'm going to kick it right off. Most remember the 1989 World Series for the earthquake at the start of Game 3 and subsequent 10-day delay. But some may forget this was the only year the would-be Oakland A's dynasty was able to seal the deal. Sandwiched between the World Series defeats in 1988 and 1990, Oakland's 89 team completely dominated its Bay Area rivals, the San Francisco Giants, with a 4-game sweep, earning Oakland their first championship since the 1970s dynasty. While these A's teams are most remembered for the Bash Brothers, Mark McGwire and Jose Canseco, it was the contributions of an electric rotation that included Dave Stewart, Mike Moore, and Bob Welch that helped put it over the top. In music, now, a decade of Hairspray came to a close, while groundbreaking releases from newcomers and veterans alike shook up the landscape. From Nirvana's Bleach and Nine Inch Nails' Pretty Hate Machine to the Beastie Boys' Paul's Boutique and Tom Petty's Full Moon Fever, 1989 was absolutely packed with blockbusters, whose influence still resonates 30 years later. But just as impactful as a debut from Nirvana, another debut came in the trading card industry. You all know what we're talking about. The beautiful 1989 Upper Deck baseball cards. All right. There we go. And there's the quintessential one right there. Ken Griffey Jr., for those of you who
Do I take it out of the case just to remove the glare? Gosh.
It's
dangerous.
For those of you who aren't watching, Jonathan's holding up the
You just
Ken
slipped
Griffey Jr.
3 PSA grades by doing
Right.
No, putting it back in docks at another 2.
Right. The 1989 beautiful Ken Griffey Jr. rookie card. He just looks like a baby there, doesn't he?
Yeah, it was revolutionary on a lot of different aspects. Because it was the first time a company had tried to implement some kind of anti-counterfeiting with the holograms on the backs of the cards.
Right.
And then it was ballsy for a company who had never made cards before to put an unknown rookie as the number 1 card in the set. Because usually that card is reserved for known Hall of Famers or like.
It would have been like Canseco or something.
Or like established superstars.
Yeah.
Yep. All he had done was have 61 at bats at AA Vermont.
Right? Yeah, and they're like, you're going to be the face of our company, basically. And to put it into perspective, 1989 Upper Deck was $1 a pack.
Yeah.
Which was at the time unheard of. People were like, that's effing absurd. Right. Because a pack of Tops was 45 cents.
Yeah.
And so, people were like, kids aren't going to spend double the money, or, you know what I mean? Right. And it ended up, they changed the game forever, basically. You know what I mean? It was the absolute, start of the baseball just boom that happened that changed baseball cards forever, better or worse.
Mm-hmm. They were, the higher quality of paper,
for sure.
What they were printed on.
The gloss, yeah.
Glossy, yeah. And just a real...
You got 2 photos per card, which in a pre-internet age, it was like, that, as a baseball fan, you were like, yes, I want to see more of the player I like. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, exactly. The beautiful photos on the back as well. Photography was good. The design. I remember our cousin Justin, Levi, he was the first person to show me an Upper Deck. And the shit just blew my mind. He was like, I hadn't even heard of it, he was like, there's these new cards called Upper Deck. Look at these. They're so nice, and he was really, Vanna Whiting them up, look at this, and I was like,
look at that beautiful
sure enough, man.
pack.
Yeah, I was hooked,
which was
man.
State of the art at the time because it was tamper-proof.
Yeah, everything about the aesthetics, like Levi said, security enhanced, and just, it was baseball cards put on a tuxedo. You know what I mean? When the Upper Decks came around.
It had gotten to that point to where they had to do something
Mm-hmm.
because guys who owned hobby shops would get boxes of tops, gently open them up, take out the good cards, put in a few filler cards, then take an iron and reseal the package.
Because it was just wax, right?
Yeah.
Hence the term wax packs, yeah.
Guys, jump back for a second. Donruss did that too, but were scores like wax packs as well? Sorry to cut you.
Scores were
the cellophane, like the real thin cellophane.
Yeah, cellophane.
Okay, all right. Okay, sorry to cut you off. Yeah.
No. What's crazy now in today's money, you can buy a box of 1989 tops for about $10 to $15.
Right.
Sure.
A box of 1989 Upper Deck Low Series still goes for $80 to $100.
Yeah. What's the Griffey worth now? Because I remember it approaching probably. Did it get to like when we were collecting like $100? Did it get there?
I want to say it was $100.
Yeah, that's what I remember. Right. Yeah, maybe 120.
I mean, it's spotty. You know, it's like anything on the internet. I think I got one probably like 7-8 years ago for around $12.
Right.
But like I had kind of like sniped it. So I mean, I think you can still probably buy them for like $20-$25.
I never had one. I didn't have it. I don't have it.
Oh,
yeah,
really?
I was looking through my Upper Decks for this episode, and I had some of the iconic ones from that year, but not as many as I would like. Like I had the Nolan Ryan when he was still on the Astros, and it's the 3D one, or like not the 3Ds. Yeah. It's like the
tri-photo thing.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Which Upper Deck started doing more and more of those. I can't remember if the Ricky Henderson one was that year or the next year. I think it might have been the following season. But
Ricky Henderson might have been 91.
Yeah, that was the best looking Upper Deck I think I owned from the 89 set. I've got Canseco from 89 as well. So yeah, it's just they're just gorgeous cards, and like Levi mentioned, they changed the game, and we've talked about it on this podcast before, and I could go on all night about it, but it marked the apex of baseball card collecting, but also essentially the start of its demise too.
Right. It was like the beginning of the end, basically.
Right. Yeah. Totally.
So
I mean, you flooded the market with all these glossy cards like Pinnacle and Leaf and Fleer Ultra. And
$250 a pack.
Yeah, Stadium
Club.
That
was the sad part, was other companies realized like, oh my God, kids are willing to pay $1 a pack and more.
Yeah.
And so it got way out of hand way quick. And what's crazy is one of the things that I will occasionally do is buy a box of like 90 or 91 Upper Deck, because they had those cards in them where they were autographed by Nolan Ryan or Hank Aaron.
Oh, yeah.
And they're numbered to 2,500. So there were 2,500 of those cards made.
Yeah.
But when you take into account that there were like 800,000 of each card in the set made or something, like the odds of pulling them is just crazy. And then especially when you consider they were doing the low series, high series. Well, the high series boxes, you even run your ratio, your odds get even lower because the high series have the extra 100 cards at the end of the set in it.
Right.
So like the odds of pulling those inserts, I know this isn't related to 1989 specifically, but those Upper Deck autographed inserts for like the Nolan Ryan and the Reggie Jackson and the Hank Aaron that they did,
right,
those still get like $200 and up.
Wow.
Which is crazy. Yeah.
So it looks like on eBay right now you can get a graded mint Griffey Jr. for $100. You can get an ungraded version for $30.
Yeah, I was gonna say I thought around $20-$25.
Yeah, yeah. So Levi, I have a question about this Gary Sheffield that I have here. It looks like the SS,
which was a good-looking card.
The SS on shortstop is upside down.
Is upside down. That's the error card.
Oh, so are there both versions, right side up and upside down?
Yeah. I don't know what the pricing difference is, but that was one of the error cards in the set.
Huh. Nice. Yeah, I don't recall many errors in the set.
It was the first introduction we all got to V. Wells, Vernon Wells Sr., the dad of Vernon Wells from the Blue Jays. And so he is a prolific baseball and sports artist. He did all the team checklists. And so all the team checklists for like 89, 90, 91, maybe even 92, they're all V. Wells art like that. He also did the like 1990 hockey team checklist. He did like the first 2 years of Upper Deck football, which I think was like 91 and 92.
And this is Vernon Wells' old man. No kidding.
Correct.
Wow.
The ball player's old man. Wow.
Correct.
Wow. No kidding. I had no idea. I remember the V. Wells, and I now that the checklist, I was just looking at it, found an Eric Davis one last night.
They're gorgeous cards.
Oh, they're beautiful. Yeah. But yeah, I had no idea. I never knew that was Vernon Wells' dad. Wow.
And so, he's still around making art, and he does a thing each year where he makes a painting of the MVPs for each season.
Sure.
Nice.
And it'll be like both of them on the same painting. And usually whichever one sees it first ends up buying it from him.
Nice.
They had a picture of Mike Trout holding the one where it was the year it was Clayton Kershaw and Mike Trout MVPs.
Nice.
His paintings go from like 6,000 to 20 grand.
Wow.
Nice.
For an original. Yeah.
Good for him. Well, you know what, guys? Speaking of, obviously, 1989 Upper Deck is the big story of the year in cards. But I thought it was a really good.
Sets were no slouches.
I know they weren't at all. And I think the top set that year is really strong. It's probably next
one of
to
the better looking sets.
Mm-hmm. Next to 87 with the wood, 89 is my second favorite set.
Those
and Jonathan was talking
about fresh, buddy. Those are like glossy.
They've been in my binder.
Jonathan had mentioned the.
There you go,
oh yeah.
The Gary Sheffield Upper Deck, or he just showed you that one. This one, I also think this is one of the best cards of someone that's wearing braces as well. Tops
could have sued like every Little League photographer after that, because I think they used that same Future Star thing on the tops of all of our cards.
Right.
I think I have a card where I'm like holding a bat and it says Future Star like that at the top.
So that's this is a good looking card. You know what Future Star I didn't have. I would say that the quintessential Tops card of that year. This is definitely a runner up. But I don't have the Greg Jeffries. Do you guys have the Greg Jeffries?
No.
Oh, no. I remember that one.
Yeah. That one was a big deal. That one was like on the cover of the packs. And
he's doing that weird like haunch.
Right.
Yeah.
Like like he's ready for.
As a Cubs fan, like the Mark Grace card and the Ryan Sandberg card are just beautiful.
Oh yeah.
And
the Grace is where he's got his back turned and he's kind of like.
Grace has his back turned, and a unique thing about that card is his jersey is number 53 in that card, which I don't know if like that was his number like the first week in town or what. But
it was like spring training photo.
He was always 17 after that.
Yeah,
because they take a lot of these photos during spring training, right? Don't they? Yeah. So
the thing I really liked about this Danny Tartable one is that he didn't want to pull his hat all the way down to mess with the quaff just during batting practice.
Nice. Very good one here too of like Harold Reynolds, because a lot of the guys aren't posing in the photos, you know.
Oh, nice.
Some are, but Harold Reynolds kind of it's kind of like, hey, all right, hey, you got me there.
HR.
He's like checking out some chicks in the parking lot or something.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. But Levi, I found another one. I think maybe you and I tried to pass this off as a relative. Terry Leach, and we have a fake Terry Leach autograph on it. Okay? And also, for some reason, he's saying number one. So I think that we kind of blew it there. Like he's just like, there's like a word bubble and it says one. So I don't know.
Usually, if you autograph your own cards, you don't write "I'm number one" on them.
Yeah, and it looks like we did a really piss poor job with this if we were trying to pass it off as Terry Leach.
We took it to the B&J coin shop, and they're like, "Get out of here."
Actually, I'm looking at his totals here. It wasn't that bad. Yeah.
He looks like a side armor.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to be on the lookout for like a late '80s Leach Mets jersey.
He had right, huh? He had a pretty good year in '87.
The pinstripes.
Won 10 straight games.
Yeah.
So
nice.
But yeah, so I think we that was a little bit of a botched counterfeit on him.
That's good. I like that though.
Yeah.
'89 Donruss was one of their better looking sets, I think, too, with like the purple borders.
Oh yeah.
Another kid.
Yeah.
Another one of his rookies, and the Diamond Kings from that year. If you go back and look at the '89 Diamond Kings, man, there's some studs in there. It's like full of Hall of Famers.
Oh, except for the guys I picked, Seitzer and Greenwell.
Now,
right?
Is there an '89 Topps Griffey?
Yes. Yeah, I have it.
Yeah, it's
okay. I don't see that one.
It wasn't like as soon as the Upper Deck dropped, everybody was like, "That's the one we want."
Yeah, right.
And then some people went to the Fleer, and then also some people were about the Bowman rookie for Griffey.
I've got that one.
Yeah. He's like solid blue.
Right.
We forgot this one though. That's a class. This is a classic. The bow.
Oh yeah. I got a few of those.
Yeah.
Good looking card.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I don't know where my Griffey is.
I've said before here too. I didn't bring any up with me, but I like Score. I think it's the most underrated of the big four. I thought they were good looking cards. They were kind of like. They weren't quite as nice as Upper Decks, but they were nicer than Topps and Donruss, just in terms of the paper stock. And
didn't they stay cheap, though? They were relatively cheap?
Yeah, they did. Yeah. They did. Yeah, they stayed relatively cheap. And they also had a photo on the back, too. You know?
Yes, they did.
I don't know how much influence, I don't know if, they set a blueprint that Upper Deck sort of mimicked a little bit.
Okay, I had to pull it up to see. '89 was the year the Score where all the cards have, that little baseball diamond down by their name.
Right, yeah.
The little outline.
They're good-looking cards. They were never, over the top with the design. You know how, the 1990 Topps are hideous. The Donruss, Donruss kind of overdid it a little bit on borders and stuff a few years, you know. Mm-hmm. Fleer always had stripes, and they never really looked that great. But I always thought Scores were good looking. Every year they don't have a bad year of design.
No, 90 Scores. I had a bunch of those.
I got a ton of 90 Scores. I had a wax box of those. But yeah, so I'll transition here a little bit because we got a lot of ground to cover still.
Yeah, we do.
Sorry, hope everybody enjoyed that half an hour of Upper Deck talk there. But anyway, I know there's a few of you out there that do. We'll kind of get into the season of 1989 now, the baseball season, beyond cards. And, for me, I've just got a couple of reflections I want to share 89 before I hand it over to you guys. But in 89, the White Sox were really bad. They were, a last-place team. Things were starting to percolate for the White Sox in the minor leagues because you had Frank Thomas and Robin Ventura and Jack McDowell, I think, might have been up already, but maybe not. I don't know. But you had, the minor league system was really strong, but those guys hadn't come up to the big leagues yet, so the White Sox sucked. And 89 was like my flirtation with other teams.
Whoa.
Much to my grandfather's chagrin. I bought an A's mesh cap, right? Because I was like, when your team sucks, the A's are sexy, Mm-hmm. I mean, they got look at the A's lineup. We're going to talk about it a little bit later. It's an all-star at every position practically,
mm-hmm.
And I was so drawn to Canseco, and I also had a Kansas City mesh hat too.
Whoa!
Because I was infatuated with Bo Jackson.
Sure.
When you got the White Sox, and the best we can do is Ivan Calderon, right? I mean, obviously we had Fisk and Baines, but it was a bad team. We won 69 games that year, and the White Sox were pretty bad in the late 80s. Fortunately, picked up after that. But if you were a kid and you were impressionable, I was going to be drawn to the other teams in the AL West, and the A's finished first that year, and the Royals finished second, and they had two of the hottest players on the planet,
mm-hmm.
Canseco and Bo. So, that was my brief flirtation with other teams. I didn't wear those hats after that year, But and my grandfather, I remember I walked in and he looked pissed. Like he tried to pass it off as like not being that.
You may as well have had like a cigarette dangling out of your mouth.
Yes, right. But yeah, he looked upset. I was like, so what do you think of the A's hat? He said, I hate West Coast teams.
They're ruining the game.
Yeah, right. Their California style of baseball, but which in that for the A's that year was winning all the time. So
between them and LA.
And then the Royals were pretty good that year too. That was probably like one of their better teams after '85.
Yeah, it was a very good team. They finished. They were in the same division as Oakland, and they didn't have a shot.
Right. Yeah. If you had the wild card system, then they would have been in the playoffs.
Sure. Sure.
So
yeah. But hey, Gabe, you did draft Frank Thomas that year, no?
Right. Yeah. I think so. I can't remember if it was that year we drafted him because he came up in '90.
Yeah, I think he was number 7 overall.
Okay.
That year, and everybody before him was not good.
Yeah.
Ben McDonald was number 1 overall.
Big Auburn guy. Him and Bo, both Auburn guys.
Yeah.
But yeah, that year, I remember my grandfather telling me too, like, the White Sox stink right now, but wait, because Ventura was still in the minors then. I think McDowell was maybe in the minors, or he hadn't totally. That he might have been going back and forth a little bit. And then we had Big Frank, obviously. So things were gonna get better. But for a year there, I just I had to go to greener pastures for a little while. Yeah. So that was my '89 reflection. I even had the Canseco shirt too with like the cartoon.
Oh right,
the caricature big head. Yeah, I was on. There's a picture of me somewhere where I've got that cap on and the Canseco shirt. I'm all A's decked out.
I appreciate you confessing this.
Yeah, I got to actually see them play that year too because I went to the White Sox game. We took like a family trip to Chicago and to the old Comiskey and got to see the A's and the White Sox.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think there's a point in everybody's youth though where they're kind of more fans of players sometimes.
Yeah,
than
sure.
they are. You know what I mean?
Especially
like
now.
That's how I ended up with like a giant binder full of Cal Ripken Jr. cards.
Sure.
Yeah. And I was like a born and bred Cubs fan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But '89 was a tough year for the Cubs, but it was a fun year. I was going to talk a little bit about that. They were called the Boys of Zimmer because Don Zimmer came in and kind of turned them around some. It didn't hurt that they had 2 guys that were the Rookie of the Year and the runner-up for Rookie of the Year, and Jerome Walton and Dwight Smith. One of the weird things that happened that season that gets overlooked a lot was that Mitch Williams was traded for Rafael Palmeiro. We traded Rafael Palmeiro to get Mitch Williams.
So that was to the Rangers then, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's just interesting, to think kind of what could have been if Palmeiro had stayed on the Cubs. But
yeah, I remember that '89 Rafael Palmeiro. Actually, the '89 Topps Rafael. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, they started really good, the Cubs that year, and then they kind of like fell from first to like third or fourth place. And then there was a game I always remember where Mark Grace got beamed, and then he charged the pitcher and got in 2 or 3 pretty good hits, and then he separated his shoulder. And so he was out for a while that year because of that. But we ended up getting to the playoffs, and we ended up having to play San Francisco. And the first game, they just like kicked our butt. Like the game was basically over in the first inning.
Maddox was your ace, right?
Yeah, but we also had that year. We had 3 pitchers that had 16 wins: Sutcliffe, Bilecki, and Maddox.
Oh, okay.
So,
yeah, Mike Bilecki, right? Yeah.
Yep. So he got a Diamond King in 1990 because of his performance in '89, and so we had pitching, but so in game 1 they won, game 2 we kind of did the same thing to them. We scored 6 runs in the first inning of game 2, and so we put that game away. And then the next 3 games, because it's best of 5, the Cubs managed to out-hit them every game and then still lose. which was like heartbreaking as a kid. I would have been.
That's pure like Cubs luck right there.
Yeah, it was like when you go back and look at the boxes now, you're like, oh, they out hit them by 2 that game. They out hit them by 3 or 4 that game. They out hit them the last game, game 5. The Cubs had 10 hits. The Giants had 4, and the Cubs still lost.
Yeah.
Mark Grace went 11 for 17 in that series.
Damn.
Although Will Clark went 13 for 20.
No, and yeah, he was like the Cub killer. I'll never forget that. Because up until that point, like I had wheeled and dealed some 87 tops, Will Clarks and shit. Mm-hmm. And like after that point, it was like I'm burning my Will Clark cards.
Maddox was awful that series. He was really bad.
And what's crazy to think is that was the only series Mark Grace got to show off. You know what I mean? It was the only time I think he was in the playoffs for the Cubs.
Yeah,
for the Cubs at least.
He was in there for Arizona later, right?
Yeah. He got a ring with Arizona.
Did he?
Pretty sure, didn't
he? Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
I believe so.
Your boy Jerome Walton couldn't string together a decent season after that.
No, it flashed in the pan.
Yeah. Right, I mean,
we didn't get a ton of good seasons out of Dwight Smith either. Really.
No. Yeah. The Cubs kept Walton around for about 3 more years, but and he stuck around the league until '98, but never again in what looks like a full-time role. Yeah. So yeah, man.
That was tough.
There, yeah, sorry.
Will Clark, Cubs killer.
I only had to wait till 2016 after that.
Right.
Yeah. But really, I mean, how do you think they would have fared against Oakland?
Honestly, they would have got their butts kicked.
That would have been tough, man. I like to give
the
benefit of the doubt, but I don't think so.
Yeah, it would have been hard.
They would have done the same thing they did to the Giants to the Cubs.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that Ace, Jonathan, get into it now. I mean, that Ace team's was just stacked.
It was.
Yeah, and we can give them their due now.
Yeah, so, obviously 88, the A's make it to the World Series and lose in very dramatic fashion to the Dodgers. But for 89, they retooled a little bit, and they signed a former number 1 overall draft pick in Mike Moore. Who was a pitcher for the Seattle Mariners. Of note, numbers 2 and 3 in that draft, Joe Carter and Springfield's own Dick Schofield. For that,
Schofield was drafted that high. Okay.
Number 3, yeah.
I didn't know that.
Schofield was number 3 overall.
Well, because he was coming from like a baseball pedigree family.
Yeah,
sure. What was his dad or his grandpa?
Yeah, exactly. And that was a very good draft. The top 10 picks in that I think it was 1981 draft. Like 5 of them ended up being very good, which is usually 3 more than what you usually get.
Was Joe Carter the Cubs? Because I know he was on the Cubs right at the start of his career.
Ooh, here I can tell you.
I don't know if they drafted him or if they got him in a trade.
It was. Let's see. It was the Cubs drafted him number 2 overall, and then Dick Schofield by the Angels.
I don't even know if they gave him 3 seasons.
The other really good players in that top 10 that draft were Kevin McReynolds and Ron Darling.
Good Mets there.
Yeah. So anyway, Mike Moore, number 1 overall, but he was mostly pretty bad for the Mariners for his first 5 years, with the exception of one pretty good season. And then in the offseason of 88-89, the A's signed him to a free agent contract. And in 89, for the world champion A's, he went on to be their best player according to Baseball Reference WAR. He went 19-11 with a 2.61 ERA. in 240 innings, and it was literally the best season of his career. And he finished third in the Cy Young voting that year, and he was an All-Star. He even got some MVP votes. And so it was a gamble on Oakland's part to sign him, because even though he was the number one overall, he wasn't that good up to that point. So then the second sneaky move, the second sneaky signing 2 days later in that offseason by Oakland was a guy who ended up only having a few dozen at-bats for them before being sent down to the minors, and that was one Billy Beane, who they had signed, former, I believe, number one overall. And when they wanted to send him down to the minors, he said, "I can't do this again. Why don't you give me a job as a scout, as an advanced scout?" And that was the beginning of Billy Beane's career in the front office of the A's. And which ultimately led to him being the GM and then leading them to many playoff apperances under what was dubbed Moneyball. Yeah, and it gave us Brad Pitt.
Yes. I had to look up the Cy Young. That was the year Saberhagen got his second Cy Young.
Saberhagen that year was, according to Baseball Reference WAR, he was the best player in all of baseball that year with 23
wins.
Yeah. He was really, really good.
I'm looking at the numbers. I don't want to digress here much, but if like his win total was just a little bit higher, I mean, Saberhagen, you can make the case for the Hall of Fame for him. You know, I mean, like it.
He didn't have the consistency and the longevity. Right. Yeah,
right. That's the thing.
Saberhagen was known to have the every other year syndrome, where he was really good in odd-numbered years and not very good in even-numbered years.
Right. Yeah, I mean, he had, obviously 2 Cy Youngs.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
there's not many
Tim
pitchers.
Got 2 Cy Youngs, and he's not going to get in the Hall of Fame. So.
Yeah. It's a small list of pitchers who have 2 Cy Youngs and don't make it into the Hall. So
right.
Yeah.
But I had to look up Mike Moore because I was kind of stumbled across some of the same research, Jonathan, and I was like, I kind of remember the name, but it's such like a common kind of pedestrian name. Sure. That I'm like, who is Mike Moore again? And I think maybe I had a couple of his cards when he was on the Mariners, but he's just not. When I think of the '89 A's, I think of Dave Stewart, as the ace. Yep. And then they had Bob Welch as well. Yep. But yeah, I kind of forgot about him prior to this episode.
Absolutely, yeah. Everybody thinks of Stewart and Welch and Eck from the bullpen, but that three-headed monster of Stewart and Moore and Welch is and Storm Davis was excellent that year as well. Storm Davis was 19-7 though. He had kind of a balloon DRA, but damn. But yeah, they were tough.
Also had a good setup guy in Rick Honeycutt too.
Yes.
He doesn't get obviously he's not as big of a name as those guys that you just mentioned. He's not a starter, but he was a solid bullpen guy.
Yeah, he was very good. He was very good. But halfway through that season, halfway through the 1989 season, the A's reacquired one Ricky Henderson in a trade with the Yankees. That involved the other guy from Jose Canseco's rookie card, Eric Plunk. And I think like Luis Polonia. And Hendo was while he was kind of entering, it seemed like he was kind of entering the twilight of his career with the Yankees. When he rejoined the A's, he was rejuvenated and he was tearing it up.
No scrubs on that A's starting 9, man.
Steinbach, McGuire, Phillips, Gallego, Lansford, Ricky, Dave Henderson, Dave Parker, Walt Weiss, man. Yeah. But Ricky won the '89 ALCS MVP. He went 15 for 34 in the postseason with 3 triples, 3 home runs, 11 stolen bases, and 9 walks. That's pretty good.
Yeah. But you're right though, man. They were only able to pull off one World Series out of talent that good, Yeah. Like that team's run was like 88-92. They had they missed the playoffs in 91, and then they got back in 92. But that was, and then after that team kind of disbanded. They traded Canseco to Texas and
McGuire.
But yeah, they were capable of winning the thing every year.
Sure.
That they had the talent to win it. They had the talent to win like 5 straight titles.
Yeah.
So in some regards, I guess they're kind of a disappointment.
Yeah, I would think that Oakland fans probably feel that way, that they only got one. Much like as Bears fans, you only got one Super Bowl out of the '85 era team.
I'll talk about another pitcher, and this guy's even, I think, a little more flukish than Mike Moore. Guys, you guys know without looking who was the NL Cy Young winner in '89? Another guy with a very common name.
Can you give me a team?
San Diego.
It's not Chris Young. That was much later. But he meets the
Like,
criteria.
you're right on the name. The name just being common. It's a Jim Smith type name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it Ed Whitlock, was it?
No, good guess, though. Good guess. The Whitlock they had, I think, around then as well. But no, it's... this is really kind of a flukish Cy Young season. Mark Davis.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Who also pitched for the Royals eventually, I think.
Yeah.
Dude, Mark Davis won the Cy Young that year.
Wow.
Yeah. For the Padres. The Padres are pretty good that year. I mean, they didn't make the playoffs, but they were like a solid second place team.
Well, and what's crazy is right at the end, basically, I think it was at the end of the '89 season, the Padres traded, because Joe Carter had gotten onto the Padres at that time.
Right.
They traded Joe Carter and Roberto Alomar got traded from the Padres to the Blue Jays for Tony Fernandez and Fred McGriff.
That was a killer trade, man.
That was a blockbuster trade. Man.
That's like a video game trade.
Yeah, that's
it is. Right?
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I'd forgotten that that many big names were involved. I mean, those are 4 studs, man.
Dude, we would have spent a good 90 minutes making that trade on a Friday night, in like the 6th grade. like working that out over Cheetos and some A&W. Oh man,
definitely. Maybe a tombstone thrown in there. But no, Davis was a closer. So it was when they award that. I don't know. I don't know how often it happens, but they give the Cy Young to a closer.
Yeah, every now and again.
Yeah. He had in all fairness, he had a good year the year before. He had 28 saves, 2.01 ERA. But yeah, man, you want this guy closing out games in '89, man. He had a 1.85 ERA, 70 appearances, 44 saves. Damn. His whip is 1.047.
Nice.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
No, he was able to put together, and I don't know.
Over the course of, it says he pitched 25 innings that year, and then, in the last month he pitched 25 innings.
Oh damn!
In that last month of the season, he inherited 19 runners and didn't allow one of them to score.
Wow. Badass.
Davis getting it done, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then the next year he goes to Kansas City. I don't know if that was like a contract year or what, because that wouldn't necessarily be a guy I would trade.
Yeah, I don't know the history on that.
Yeah, it must have been. It must have been like a contract thing or something. Yeah, like Kansas City's. Yeah, it was because like his salary jumped exponentially.
Oh, okay.
The next year on Kansas City.
Yeah.
And then he wasn't that good anymore.
No. Yeah.
Kansas City ponied up some cash for him for that time. He was like he got paid. He was with the Royals for 3 years, then he went back to San Diego to close out his career in '94. Yeah, because he made $600,000 for the Padres in '89, and then made 2.1 for KC the next year, and then 3.6 each the next 2 years.
That's a big contract.
That's big money for a closer.
Yeah.
25, 30 years ago. So, yeah.
Yeah. Another stud that year, Kevin Mitchell, was unbelievable. 47 home runs, 125 RBI.
One barehanded outfield catch.
Oh, one of the greatest catches of all time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, folks, if you've never seen that, it's a fly ball into left field, like tailing on him towards the foul line. He puts his hand up, and he almost like catches it behind his head with his bare hand. Man. Yeah, you got to look that up.
Yeah, Mitchell is the NL MVP that year, and then American League MVP Robin Yount.
Yeah, still getting it done.
The old man still has it.
Right? Yeah. He would have. Gosh. Yeah. Exactly. He would have been definitely. That would have. He probably maybe only played for 3-4 more seasons after that. But yeah, I don't know, man.
Yeah. I think Yount played till like 94.
Okay.
Yeah. Yount was very good, but Mitchell, that was the best season of his career, obviously.
Yount was 33 in '89.
All right.
Oh, okay.
Played till he was 37 in '93.
Yeah, still put together 20.
The thing that gets him is he came into the league when he was 18 in 1974.
Wow.
Oh, wow. And the thing about Mitchell too was that he won the home run title with 47 home runs. The next closest was Howard Johnson and Fred McGriff at 36. That's 11 more home runs than those dudes.
Right. Yeah, man. I mean, to have a guy like
that's really a huge margin.
Flirting with 50 home runs, then too. I mean that.
It was a down year for home runs that year. I was looking it up compared to the previous and following years, and it was a really down year.
Right.
It was a bad batch of anabolics going around that year.
Right. Dead ball era.
Yeah. Yeah. If you guys read up on Kevin Mitchell, I don't want to tarnish the glory, but he doesn't really seem like a great guy.
No.
I don't know if you guys have read. There's several arrests and domestic battery charges and things like that. So.
I don't like to think of him beyond my 87 Topps collection.
Exactly. Yeah.
He doesn't exist to me beyond the cardboard.
Right. Right. Yeah. So not going to buy that jersey. All right. So. But anyway.
So to wrap up the baseball portion, do you guys remember watching the World Series when the earthquake happened?
I do remember that.
I do. Vaguely, but I do.
I don't remember who it was, but I remember a player like carrying either like a kid or
there was a lot of family members that were shuffled onto the field after.
Because it was like all the baseball's family members were in the stands, and then it was like
Yeah.
It was like everybody was embracing on the field.
Yeah.
Right.
Al Michaels like, I think we're having an earthquake. It's during the pregame. There's like a video recap going on of the previous two games, and Tim McCarver's blabbing about something, and then the video cuts out, and it's just audio. It's really bad, like staticky audio of Al Michaels saying, "Oh, I don't know if we're still on the air, but if so, we had an earthquake." But then they brought all those players' families onto the field.
Yeah.
That the series was delayed 10 days.
That's a big gap, man. Yeah. I mean, I remember the news footage, of when the bridge collapsed, right?
Yeah, the pancaked double-decker interstate or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't. Before you mentioning that though, I didn't know that the gap between games was that long.
Yeah.
So the series would have extended into November, probably, right?
Almost. It didn't though, because it was a sweep mainly.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Right.
Because Oakland kicked their ass the first two games and kicked their ass the second two games.
Right. So not going to let an earthquake stop them, right? Yeah, that was also the year I mentioned it earlier, but kind of a parting thought on '89. That was really the year of Bo Jackson as a bona fide superstar too.
Yep, hit the home run in the All-Star game.
Won the All-Star game MVP. You had the Nike commercials starting to come on. '89-90. I mean, he was he had some good years. '87, '88, he was pretty good. Like he was certainly on the radar. But yeah, '89, he really broke through.
Yeah.
Didn't last.
Well, 1989 was also the year of Tecmo Bowl, if we're talking.
Right.
Oh, good point. Good point.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, he was unstoppable.
It was a good time to be Bo, man.
Right.
Yeah. So, let's good stuff, guys. We'll switch it over to our other hemisphere now with music in 1989. A good year for music as an often scrutinized decade comes to a close. As we alluded to in the introduction. Some Jonathan talked about maybe some of these seminal records here. that came out in '89, and I think some bands like, Nine Inch Nails' "Pretty Hate Machine," is one that is pretty ahead of its time, in terms of just being, I think, obviously you had Ministry and you had some other bands that were kind of flirting with that sound. And in some ways, just I guess Ministry even probably laying the blueprint for it.
Sure.
But yeah, Pretty Hate Machine was not something I was personally listening to in 1989.
Oh no!
I was more attuned to Warrant's "Dirty, Rotten, Filthy, Stinking Rich," but Pretty Hate Machine probably more important in the grand scheme of things. Yeah.
I tried to spin the warrant.
I
tried to spin the warrant. I couldn't get more than halfway through it.
Oh, come on. Yeah. Oh, man. Down Boys is a ripper, dude.
Oh, I listened to Down Boys. Yeah.
That's a good tune, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, I always like the album cover too. That caricature kind of guy with the cigar and the
yeah. Smoking.
But yeah, no, there was some, Pretty Hate Machine, Bleach obviously was, Nirvana hadn't broken through yet, but I think probably in the cool kids circles they were starting to get some buzz before MTV found out. And then, we've talked about it before, but the self-titled Stone Roses record, quite a landmark LP.
Which was their debut as well, right?
Which was their debut. Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. And that was another one that like I was listening to the Stone Roses when I was in fourth, fifth grade.
We can't lay claim to any of these.
Right. Yeah. Bleach, Pretty Hate Machine, Stone Roses. Probably, the really three really critically acclaimed albums that year. Yeah. No, I was all warmed that year.
I wasn't like, Mom, bring me home the new Jesus and Mary Chain, please.
Right. No, really. Yeah. Right.
Well, one album that touched a lot of our lives, and I remember I was introduced to this record by a friend of my sister's who was 10 years older than me. And she's like, you got to hear this album. It's these two guys. And the name of this record is called Milli Vanilli. Girl, it's true. And I'm like, okay. So they put it on, and I'm like, this is pretty cool. I can dig this. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, at the time, it was like kind of soulful R&B, like easy to groove to kind of tunes, and
it's like more accessible Terrence Trent D'Arby, what I mean?
Right, yeah, like totally. But like the soul of it was still there.
Sure, yeah.
And so they went on to sell like 7 million copies of this record, and so one of the first times Milli Vanilli, who was the faces of Milli Vanilli, was a guy named Rob Pilatus and another guy named Fab Morvan. Mm-hmm. And one of the first times they went to MTV to do an interview, after they left, everyone at MTV was like, there's no way those dudes could have been the guys who sang on the record.
Whoa. They knew right away.
Because I guess like their English was so bad because they're from Germany. And And so like that was like one of the first ever like kind of like something might not be right kind of things. And so the whole album was recorded by a bunch of studio musicians, and a producer was directing all of this, and it became like basically the biggest music scandal in like decades. Never had an album ever sold that many copies and then automatically get deleted out of catalogs.
Wow.
Like it was like they stopped selling it.
Oh, did they like pull it from stores and stuff? Yes. Oh, I didn't know that. Wow.
And then also they had won a Grammy for Best New Artist in 1999.
Right.
And the Grammy, they revoked it. It was the first time that had ever happened.
Huh. Oh, shit. I didn't know the penalties were that harsh.
I get revoking the Grammy, but pulling it from shelves seems a little extreme.
Right?
Like, I mean, so the people really into him, like a lot of people like in the top 40 probably didn't give a shit, I mean...
Well, and so, like the real voices on it were these guys named John Davis, Charles Shaw, and Brad Howell. And then there was like 9 other backup singers, women and men,
Sure.
who were like used and put on it. And so I just remember though, before it all came crashing down, I really, really liked that tape. I had it on tape. And I used to, baby, don't forget my number.
Girl, you know it's true.
Yeah.
Girl.
Blame it on the rain. It was like my introduction into like soulful ballads.
They were on, I think they were on the Cosby Show on one episode too.
They may have been.
Yeah.
Did the session musicians ever like get together to record a follow-up just under their own name?
Did, like, okay, so what's funny is those guys got together and tried to kind of record something and become famous, and it didn't happen.
Sure.
And then Rob and Fab were like, we're going to try and teach ourselves English and how to sing better. And they put out an album, and it didn't sell well either. So, like, it came crashing down, and it didn't work out for anybody involved.
It would have been nice then if they just like got back together and did it like they did the first time and tried that again. But obviously this ends more tragically than that.
Yeah. So that was a pretty big record for me in 1989. And then another record that it seemed like you couldn't escape in 1989 was Don Henley's End of the Innocents, which was his biggest up to that time, and I think it still holds it. It was his biggest selling solo record ever. And which is a unique thing for Don Henley, because up until like that point, once he had left the Eagles and gone solo, he had the record with Dirty Laundry, which is like 83, 84, somewhere in there. And then he had Building the Perfect Beast, and then he had End of the Innocents. And then after that, I think he made like 2 records in 30 years.
Yeah.
So it was like he had the highest, like, most selling record of his career, and then he decided to like not make a record for like 12 years after it.
He had plenty of loot, I guess, It's
got some of his biggest hits: End of the Innocents, Heart of the Matter, Last Worthless Evening. It's all contemporary adult, like, dad rock, you know what I mean?
Definitely.
But there's some really neat performances that not a lot of people know about. Bruce Hornsby plays piano on the record. Axl Rose sings backup on the song I Will Not Go Quietly.
No shit.
Yeah. Mike Campbell has some parts on there that he plays. Jeff Porcaro from Toto. Backup singers, 3 ladies that you've probably heard of: Sheryl Crow, Edie Brickell, and Melissa Etheridge.
Jesus.
So yeah, the record was like engineered to be.
Well, Don Henley's got an Oakland A's there in the studio.
No kidding.
Yeah. So that was another one, and I remember the videos for those songs were on all the time, especially End of the Innocents and Last Worthless Evening. It seemed like you could hardly escape those videos. The other 2 records that I heard a lot that year was Aerosmith Pump, and part of this was because my dad was on a softball team. He would like sometimes play, but a lot of the times he would coach third base. And this is like a JC softball league where everybody's getting drunk before and after the games probably. But like when Pump hit, like all the guys on the team were probably like 15 to 20 years younger than my dad, because he was like one of the old coaches. And it was like everyone had Pump. Like I remember guys wearing like Pump T-shirts with the 2 trucks on each other.
Right.
I remember going to the tavern after the games and stuff, and people would be playing Lovin' in the Elevator and Janie's Got a Gun and Take Me to the Other Side, What It Takes. It was like that record. I couldn't escape that one either. Which it's. I know you're probably. I don't think you're a big fan of that record, Gabe. Are you? In the Aerosmith, pantheon, it's probably not their best studio album.
I don't mind the other side, but I mean, I
always like What It Takes.
Yeah, it's not really what I'm drawn to. I didn't get a chance. I didn't get a chance to revisit it for this episode. I wish I could have, but there was just a lot of records I wasn't able to get to. Yeah.
It's hard to top. Toys in the Attic and Rocks. Plus, I think this was at a point in their career where they were trying to like live a little bit of a different lifestyle. Mm-hmm. So I think it was easier for them to play music like this, where it was less like drugs and rock and roll and more like social issues.
Sure. I think I like Pump better than Permanent Vacation. Also,
oh yeah, I would say that. Yeah.
Yeah. Permanent. Yeah, it's a little, like you said, it's got some more serious themes in it. Darker songs, so to speak, as well. But anyway. Yeah, that's it was a good time to be Aerosmith, man. I mean, they were in Act 2,
Another band that kind of hit their second act the same year was a band called the B-52s.
Oh yeah.
And they had a huge record that year called Cosmic Thing, produced by Nile Rodgers from Chic fame, and the younger kids know him as Pharrell's buddy, and also Don Was, I think, produced that as well. Some of it. And so, I remember the video for Love Shack being on all the time when it first came out. And probably the first time I ever saw a drag queen, because RuPaul, it was one of the first appearances of RuPaul ever, is the video for Love Shack.
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
It was kind of like, it was their first top 10 hit ever.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
they were
huge.
an album that kind of, like, I don't know if I don't want to say the word career saving, because it's like their career was in dire.
Yeah, they were going to do their thing regardless.
But it was like an album that brought them back, kind of like it did Aerosmith with Pump. And
Well, also, they're different audiences. I mean, they were prior to Cosmic Thing. They were. You could lump them in with like the Talking Heads,
Right,
I mean,
or new wave for sure.
Right, whereas I mean, obviously, then Cosmic Thing put them, they're MTV stars after that.
Right, well, and Rome, I remember that single specifically because it may have been one of the first times in my life like I'd ever heard someone say it's okay to just roam around and do whatever, you know what I mean? As a child, you're told by everyone and all, authority figures a certain way to live and act and stuff. And I always thought that song was kind of neat, because it was probably my first introduction into there's a life beyond what people are telling me.
Sure. Nice. Yeah. Good stuff, man.
I do have a question, Gabe. Do you remember in high school, or I'm sorry, middle school, a band came to the middle school to play Love Shack?
Yeah, it was.
We gathered in the gymnasium.
It was high school students, though.
That's what I thought. It was high school students. Who was it?
Denise's sister, Deanna. I'm sorry, everybody, for if we have any audience members not from Petersburg, Illinois. They're just like, what?
But just this idea that like a bunch of middle schoolers would sit there and hear Love Shack of all songs played to them live during in the middle of the day in the gymnasium.
Right. Yeah, there was like a high
Everybody stop class. We've got to go listen to Love Shack.
I remember that. High school kids had a band, and they came to our middle school. Yeah, I remember that, and they did Love Shack. Yeah.
I want like a 30 for 30 that gets into how this happened.
Yeah, right, absolutely.
Anyway,
Mr. Conklin was pulling some strings, man. I tell you. But yeah, those are all. I mentioned for me, the as I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, I wasn't listening to all the good albums in 1989. All right, like all of these albums that I kind of that I came across in researching this episode. Either I arrived at those at a much later date, like the Stone Roses and Bleach, and Bleach not that much later, but Pretty Hate Machine a little bit later. But a couple of the records that really, I'll share three like Levi did that stand out to me. Two of them are more sort of more recent discoveries. The first one is, and it's Chris Rea. He has an album. He's a British sort of bluesy dude who's had an album come out that year in '89 with gosh, I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank here on. I've got the notes on Chris Rea and then forgot the Welcome to Hell, the Road to Hell. Excuse me, Road to Hell.
Road to Hell. Yeah,
sorry about that, guys. There, brain fart there. No. But yeah, this album, it's very very moody. Yeah, when I heard it, and I wasn't that familiar. Somebody had suggested it actually on the Black Crowes message board. People were just talking about albums they got into recently, and I put in him, in the streaming service, and I'd heard of him before. I knew like he was kind of a under the radar, kind of somewhat critically acclaimed British musician. But then I heard this record, and I'm like, geez, man, this is really good, To me, it definitely has the 80s production value to it. I look at what Eric Clapton was doing around this time, which I think he had Journeyman come out that year, right? I think so, in 89. This, to me, is kind of like a better version of what Eric Clapton was doing around this time, in my opinion. And Clapton's always been fond of American blues and also fond of kind of your Tulsa and Texas kind of music scenes. Whereas I think Chris Rea really, does a really, I don't know if authentic is the right word, but he pays homage to sort of, American blues without sort of pandering. And not that I don't like Clapton stuff then, but to me, I like this record better than Journeyman. I think it's like a better version of it. And, it's a little darker, like the songs are kind of slow burns, they start out kind of subtly, and then, this Texas song is just weird. It's got like some noirish qualities to it. And also the guy that he gets compared to, like the first guy I thought of, and I had to look it up. I'm like, oh, are they connected in some ways? It reminds me of a Mark Knopfler record.
Oh, yeah.
It's got that vibe to it. Well, it turns out he worked with Knopfler's brother, right, David,
sure,
who was also in Dire Straits. So Chris Rea and David Knopfler have collaborated before. I don't know if Mark Knopfler and Chris Rea have, but yeah, definitely you could tell me it almost was Mark Knopfler if I didn't see the cover of the album, and this is one of those things that shows you kind of, even though a lot of bands are popular in England and they're also popular in America, this album went to #1 in the UK. The Road to Hell did.
Right.
Wow.
And yeah, and then it didn't even crack the top 100 in the United States.
Wow.
So.
Another one of our cousins on there, Kevin Leach on keyboards.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. So the Road to Hell, if you haven't heard it, check it out. Like I said, it is. It's just kind of it's a night album, definitely. It's kind of like a hitchhiking on a dark Texas highway, at night.
Yeah. Well, in the '80s were good for that type of a vibe too, like the kind of like the Red Rider slow burn.
Yeah,
kind of
yeah, good comparison. Yeah, with Tom Cochran. Yeah. You know what else? It's a little poppier, but some of the Kinks work from the mid '80s, like living on a thin line. That almost sounds like it could be a song on this record.
Sure.
It's got a little bit of that vibe to it. So yeah, I was really knocked out. If you haven't heard it, yeah, welcome. Sorry, it took me about 30 seconds to get the title right, but The Road to Hell. I keep wanting to say Welcome to Hell, but The Road to Hell. Really good record. I don't know if you guys got a chance to spin it. But,
I did. Yeah, and I was immediately hooked. Like you said, it's unmistakably 80s, but in all the best ways.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it. Yeah.
I don't have that record of his, but I have heard it before. I have a record of his from '88 called "New Light Through Old Windows."
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Nice. I've been meaning to check out his other stuff. I think maybe, because he did pretty well in Britain, and it was one of those things where he never really took off here. So you just don't hear people talking about him a lot over here. So, but yeah, I'm intrigued, and I definitely want to check out the rest of his catalog. and I think he's still around too, you know. So not sure how active he is, but yeah, great record. Really, really good stuff. The other one that I think I had heard it at the time when I was like, you know, 4th, 5th grade, and I liked it, but like I thought that, you know, for me in 1989, these guys probably didn't sound enough like Poison. A band who's become one of my favorite bands in recent years, The Cult. Their album from that year, Sonic Temple from '89, is just a barn burner. You know, this is kind of their evolution from sort of kind of gothic tinged rock, you know, like during previous LPs, and then with Electric and Love. But Sonic Temple is really, you know, it's certainly their heaviest of their first 3 records, and it really seems like it kind of gave birth to the Cult of now. You know, not that their sound hasn't evolved or anything like that, but they still seem to be kind of working off this Sonic Temple blueprint.
Yeah,
it
solidified their like hard rock direction.
I think so. That's a good way to put it. Yeah, it definitely set the tone for future releases. And you know, you watch the video for Firewoman, man. Ian's just such a badass, man. You know, I mean, he's got that like jet black, long, straight hair, like the black cowboy hat. You know, you had around '89. You know, the Black Crowes were about to take off. You had Guns N' Roses. You had the Cult. You know, those were, you know, that people were getting out of that Poison.
Yeah, the anti-hairspray thing was starting to build.
That was kind of starting to build, you know, that we were getting out of that and sort of shaking it off. And the Cult, I think, was part of that. Love is I think probably their best LP, but you know, Sonic Temple is right up there. I mean, you can't go wrong with their first 3 records, and even I like their recent stuff too. But yeah, so that one really stands out to me as one I've discovered, you know, prior to this episode, but more so in recent years. And then lastly, you know, I've mentioned him a couple times during this episode already, but Warrant. Obviously not Warrant record, not going to be confused for a Jesus and Mary Chain record anytime soon. But you know, they were kind of one of hair metal or glam metal. It's kind of one of the final success stories of that genre, right? Because this is their debut record, right at the end of the decade.
Right.
So '89, right? First record, big album, you know, it's got like, you know, 3 big singles on it or so. And I think, like Jonathan said, he couldn't get through the whole record. Don't get me wrong. It's an exercise in patience at times, but the singles are all, I see why all those songs became monster singles.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like they had the ballad with Heaven. They had the up-tempo rocker with Down Boys. And you know, they didn't wait long. They went right in, you know, afterwards. Somebody's going to capitalize on this. And then Cherry Pie came out the following year. Mm-hmm. And then it was over after that. You know, like 1 year later, then you've got 10 and Nevermind, you know what I mean, coming out a year after Cherry Pie. So I say this is Warrant more so as, you know, not that I'm in love with the album, although I do think it's a fun record. And I think that whole genre is a good time, and I think it, you know, I don't know, somebody had to party, you know, somebody had to document it. It's
interesting though, because
yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to say it's interesting because you know, they were able to kind of come in and cash in on it right at the end.
Right, near the end of it.
You know what I mean? Like, they were selling millions of records, and then, like, 2 years later, they probably couldn't sell, like, 500,000 records.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. I mean, you know, like, in a matter of 2 years from where, like, Down Boys, and then go to, like, 1991, it's like shit changed, man. You know, I mean,
yep.
So I feel, and obviously with Janie Lane too, you know, it's a tragic story, and you know, who he, you know, died a few years ago, and really was almost in some regards kind of a victim of the success of that genre, you know. So yeah, so I certainly I feel for him. it's formulaic, it's indicative of the time, but that's also kind of what makes it so enjoyable. The guy that produced that, if you go and look at his resume, this guy by the name of Beau Hill is the producer. And he was like your go-to guy if all your guitarists had like Jacksons and Ibanez's, right? Like you called Beau Hill. He was like a poor man's Bob Rock, So Beau Hill is naturally the producer of Dirty Rotten, Filthy Stinking Rich. He may have produced Cherry Pie too. I'm not sure, but yeah, it's Warrant to me is just as a document of the end of that era. That was really one of the last big albums of that era. So it just makes for an interesting part of the story to me.
Sure. So,
yeah.
Right on.
Yeah. So those are mine.
Okay. I've got a couple I'll just skim over real quick. An album I discovered 6 or 7 years ago. Peter Case's Blue Guitar is I think one of probably the most important records maybe of the 80s that ended up influencing bands I appreciate, especially Wilco. Even kind of like it was going on at the time of Uncle Tupelo, but it was it seemed to influence Wilco more than Uncle Tupelo, and highly recommend that along with the Jesus and Mary Chain Automatic. I think is a really, really good record, even though it was kind of panned when it came out because of the use of the drum machine and a bass synth, but over time I think it's grown on people a little bit more as bands are given more freedom to work with electronic instruments. But ultimately, I got kind of infatuated with a record by a band. Admittedly, I don't know a lot about, but everybody probably knows a little bit about them, and that's XTC. Do you say XTC or Ecstasy? That's how little I know about them. But they released their...
I'm not really sure. I only see it written. I don't know.
Most people know them for the song "Dear God," which most people have heard. But they released their 11th album that year called "Oranges and Lemons," and it's a lot of pop rock, pretty jangly and kind of psychedelic at the time, so a little bit retro.
Great cover on that record.
Oh yeah, one of the best of the 80s for sure.
Honestly, not long ago, I found a copy, and I haven't had the nuts to open it. I found a sealed cassette tape of that.
Sweet. It's
the original sealed cassette of Oranges and Lemons.
Dude, yeah, hipster would pay a pretty penny for that. But so yeah, I'm still learning about him, and I just enjoyed the record, and I listened to it several times over the last month. And
Skylarking from '86 is excellent too.
Yeah, I'm excited to delve into the back catalog for sure. Mayor of Simpleton is a single off there most people have probably heard, even if you don't know it by name. But what I was interested in learning was that it was a series of events that kind of led this band to create a genre of televised music that was heretofore unknown, and that was when they started to promote this album. They came over to the States from England, and they just brought some acoustic guitars to play at radio stations along, I think, the East Coast. And one day they showed it up at MTV and used these acoustic instruments in lieu of the traditional electric instruments, and recorded a set. And MTV enjoyed it so much that they decided to invite more bands to do such a thing that they eventually called Unplugged. And
this is in promotion for Oranges and Lemons.
That's my understanding. And Levi, if you know any more about that, you certainly welcome to chime in.
No, this is awesome. I'm gonna have
I didn't know that either.
That's just what I learned. And it's my understanding too that Andy Partridge of XTC, he has some anxiety issues, and so I think that may have been the impetus behind the subtler promotion of the record. And it was so successful, this method, that they booked this 6,000 seat hall in Paris, and they were going to do this across Europe, and he heard about that it was this huge venue, and he called the whole thing off. and they were bound to be able to tour off this format. And but there's a nice Letterman appearance from that year. It was their first television appearance in about 7 years. So I recommend checking that out on YouTube. But it's a really good record. It's solid. It's 60 full minutes of really great pop songs, and it's definitely worth a couple spins.
Yeah, I enjoyed listening to that one in preparation for this episode. Definitely, I was more familiar with their late '70s, early '80s stuff, but yeah, it was a lot of fun. Good record. Did you have a couple more? I'm sorry.
No, I'll leave it at that.
Okay, all right. I mean, there's a lot of albums for this episode that I didn't get to, but I want to acknowledge this though before we wrap it up. It was another great year for hip hop as well. It wasn't a few episodes ago we did 1988, and we focused a lot on hip hop in that episode and it being kind of a vanguard year for hip hop, but. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, just acknowledge that it was this is really, you're in the midst of hip hop's golden era here. This is also pre MC Hammer still, I think. But you've got, EPMD's Unfinished Business. You got Big Daddy Kane's LP from that year. You've got Queen Latifah's debut album. It was Jungle Brothers. It was a really strong year for hip hop as well. I wanted to mention that because it deserves mention. There's a whole ton of quite a few good hip hop records that year.
Not much music can make me blush, but EPMD manages to get there. On a regular basis. Right.
Well, did you get a chance to listen to Too Short's record by any chance from
no.
that year? I think you go beyond blushing. Yes. Well, anyway. But yeah, that was good. And there was also, Levi, maybe you can speak to this a little bit as well. Like, it was country music, I think, was still pretty good, around 89. You had the
89 was the introduction of Garth, I believe.
I believe so, yeah. And I can hang with country up until about Kenny Chesney. That's kind of where I go, like I'm into about everything almost, and less so of the 80s and early 90s stuff, but I still can appreciate some of it. But a great record that year. I mean, the Kentucky Headhunters' first album came out in 1989, and that's a really good record. And also, I think Clint Black's debut album from that year is really solid too.
Killing Time, yeah.
Yeah, right. So I think it was, and then also you had, I believe that was the year Keith Whitley died. And I think his record
came out on that too, I think.
Yeah, I think his record came out right before he died. But that's a really good, great album as well.
You're right. Yeah, he passed away in May of that year.
Yeah. So yeah, I think there were some solid country records. Obviously, they have the kind of the gloss that some 80s country has to it. But I still think they're really enjoyable records before things got really like too glossy,
right, yeah. 5-6 years later. With the advent of Garth, country music changed from that year on.
Right.
Becoming, not that country music wasn't always kind of slick and corporate, but it became like just as slick and corporate as rock and roll, basically, at that point.
Yeah, they started doing, in some ways, country became bad rock and roll, in some regards, once Garth hit. So some other genres that were putting out good work then as well. And then, you had big pop albums that year we didn't get to as well, like, Janet Jackson, Rhythm Nation, Madonna's Like a Prayer, probably the biggest album of the year, I would guess, which we didn't even talk about, but those are stories you already know.
Right. Just like Full Moon Fever. Like, we don't need to talk about Full Moon Fever.
Right. Full Moon Fever, Paul's Boutique as well, a groundbreaking LP for the Beastie Boys, and that could be a whole episode in itself. So, once again, folks, there's only so much time that we have, and we enjoy spending it with you. We could talk about this stuff all night. If you want to check out episodes like this one, where we do some field guides, as well as just really running the gamut with baseball and music, please visit rockchew.com. You can find all of our episodes there, as well as other fun stuff. And then also follow us on social media. You can get us at Twitter and Instagram at RockNChew. That's N as in Nana Cherry. Another good record from 1989 as well. So yeah, check us out there. Follow us, like us on Facebook, and also one other thing that would help us out a lot: if you listen to us on one of your podcasting app, whether it's iTunes or Stitcher or Spreaker or however you listen to, however you get your chew, leave us a review. It would help us out a lot. So until next time, we'll see everybody later, and enjoy the week. Take care.
Peace.